The NFL season kicking off tonight, and looking at the odds to win the championship this season, Vegas favors New England despite Tom Brady missing the first 4 games of the season. The next 3 teams with the best odds are all from the NFC: Arizona, Green Bay, and Seattle. So we have the Super Bowl rematch tonight between the Broncos and the Panthers. But who wins the Super Bowl this time around? My man.
Max Kellerman. I watched Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers offense shrink like a cheap tent in wins, and mild wins for crying out loud, even though the Denver defense wasn't mild. I watched them dab and celebrate throughout the years, throughout last season rather, and then get humbled beyond recognition. I watched them in the Super Bowl look like a shell of their collective selves. And I thought about this all season long, particularly with some of the moves that I saw teams make in the offseason, particularly with what I want to say acquisitions, because Jordy Nelson coming back to Green Bay is not an acquisition. It's a return. I've thought about all of these things, Max Kellerman. I've scoured the NFC. I've scoured the AFC. And I am picking the Carolina Panthers to meet the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. And in that Super Bowl, despite his Tier 2 status, I think that Cam Newton will show up. I think that Kelvin Benjamin will show up. I think that Jonathan Stewart will show up. I think that Carolina Panthers defense, even with the absence of Josh Norman, will show up. And ultimately, against Tom Brady, who will be on a mission, who will run roughshod over the National Football League after he serves his 4-game suspension, returning for the last 12 games in which he will win a minimum of 10 of those games before propelling the New England Patriots to the Super Bowl. It will be Cam Newton against Tom Brady, and I am picking the Carolina Panthers
Tier 2
and Cam Newton to capture the Super Bowl championship
at that point,
over the New England Patriots.
At that point, is Cam Newton Tier 1?
Yeah.
Probably.
How many Super Bowls does he have to win before he gets to Tier 1?
I am on the record. I never said that Cam Newton wasn't great. I never said he did not have a great year. I said Tier 1 to me has to have consistency. One good year doesn't do it. That's all I've ever said.
MVP,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care if Cam Newton won the Super Bowl, went 16-0, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, that should matter. You should care about
I need more than 1 year.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Now look,
Cam Newton
this is his
will
year.
win the Super Bowl championship, beating Tom Brady and the New England Patriots.
And Stephen A. will declare him Tier 1.
Right, yeah, eventually. That's great. He does that 3 or 4 more times, he might actually be Tier 1.
Whatever.
It's not a bad pick. You could also pick Green Bay. I mean, there are respectable picks out of the NFC. There will be a Super Bowl rematch, but not last year's Super Bowl, the year before. We agree the Patriots are coming out of the AFC. Brady will be on a mission. If Garoppolo goes 2-2, if he goes 3-1, Brady only has to win 8 games. Maybe they have a bye in the first round. Then the Patriots have to win 1 game to get in the AFC Championship game. Bill Belichick, to me, is the key to the team more than any. Belichick or Brady? It's Belichick. You give him time to prepare. That's why they're so tough in the playoffs, because he has time to prepare for these teams. I like the Patriots and Tom Brady on a mission, as I said, to get out of the AFC. The cliff is coming, but these 4 games of rest for him means maybe it gets pushed back to sometime earlier, middle next year before Brady falls off the cliff due to age. Patriots out of the AFC. Seattle out of the NFC. I think Seattle's the best team in football. And yes, I'm saying that even though I'm up here all the time talking about offensive line. That's the only area of football that affects every other area, special teams because of field position, time that your defense is on the field. It makes the other secondary worse. It makes your receivers better. Every single thing the offensive line affects. And Seattle does not have a good one. I mean, where there's a weakness, it's on the O-line. But we saw this O-line last year as a weak O-line, and Russell Wilson was able to put up in the second half of the year the best season of anyone in the NFL, including Tom Brady and the MVP Cam Newton. Second half of last year in the regular season, Russell Wilson was the best player in the NFL by the numbers. He was amazing, and that was in spite of the O-line. And you look at Rawls, who, maybe he doesn't play week 1, but you look at what he did as a rookie. behind that O-line, maybe he wasn't top 10, he was top 15. He was upper half of the league as a rookie. You think he's going to get better or worse in his second year? I think he's going to get better. I think he's quite good. You got the running game. You got a great quarterback. Baldwin, one of the most underrated players in football, if he's not an elite receiver, he's the next thing to it, but it doesn't always show up because the counting numbers won't be as high as some other guys. The defense is out of control. It's all world. Not only the front seven, obviously the secondary everyone knows about, and you have a great coach. You have all the ingredients with Seattle, and they will be looking for revenge against that Patriots team. They will have special motivation. Russell Wilson's in his prime, and I don't know if it's quiet as kept or not, but Seattle is in the midst of a dynasty. They don't have multiple Super Bowl rings to show for it. But
exactly, but then you ain't a dynasty.
Well, no, when you think about what that means in football, they have turned themselves into the Patriots of the NFC. You want to sound smart in any preseason? Who do you think is going to get out in the NFC? Seattle. And by the way, more years than not over the last 5 years they have.
Allow me to interject. First of all, you got the Arizona Cardinals to worry about. That's number one. Let's not ignore that. Number two, when we talk about the Seattle Seahawks, think about what we're talking about here. We got Soul, we got Glowinski, we got Britt, we got Jermaine Afidi, I think that's how you pronounce his name, and Jamarcus Webb. You've got all of these guys literally changing positions. There's no consistency. And so it's bad enough that you were subpar last year, but you're coming into 2016 with an offensive line that's in flux because you've got individuals that are switching positions. There's no beast mode in terms of Marshawn Lynch. Rawls can play, and we understand that. I like him a lot. And we saw Russell Wilson literally elevate himself to another level in those last 8 games, primarily due to the fact that he had to. I expect the Legion of Boom to resemble the Legion of Boom. I understand how formidable they're going to be. But my problem with it is this. Number one, Carolina is incredibly physical. They're highly motivated. It's not like they come into this season reigning, defending Super Bowl champions. They came up short. There's a level of motivation that's going to take place there. They don't have an Arizona to contend with in their division, okay? Seattle does. So I expect the Carolina Panthers to actually have a better record than Seattle. That means they'll probably have home field advantage.
Where they whooped up on Seattle this last playoff.
In the first half. Because the second half, Seattle came roaring back and made a game of it. But I'm just saying, there's something to be said. Look, they pulled within 7 now. So
right, so at a neutral field, or rather in Seattle, maybe you like Seattle.
But I don't expect it to be in Seattle because I think that Seattle's going to have their work cut out for them, not just with Arizona, but let's not ignore Los Angeles, despite the fact that Jeff Fisher is there coaching. The reality is they might show up once or twice a season, and they might steal a game, okay? So I look at it from that perspective. When you look at the NFC West, how competitive it is compared to the NFC South. Look, New Orleans, Atlanta, Tampa with Jameis Winston, who I expect to ball out this year. We understand that it's going to be a battle in the NFC South, but it's primarily because of nostalgia, you know, rivalries, things of that nature. In the NFC West, they're just legitimate, bona fide competition on an elevated level, and I think that they have a rougher road to the postseason than Carolina.
That's a good point in terms of where they're going to play the game, and if it's evenly matched or close, then Carolina has the advantage. If they play it in Carolina, Arizona's certainly going to be excellent in the regular season. After what I saw from Carson Palmer in the playoffs, I don't trust them to advance in the playoffs, but let's not forget, it's not necessarily going to come down to Seattle and Carolina because of, I don't know if you've heard of him, Aaron Rodgers up in Green Bay, who, unlike Seattle, which really doesn't have the O-line, Aaron Rodgers got that O-line to play behind. He's got his best receiver back. He will also be on a mission. I don't know that it comes down to Carolina and Seattle.
Well, let me say this to you. I find it, think about what I said. I said I believe Carolina will have a better regular season than Seattle.
Okay.
I also think it's possible Green Bay will have a better season than Seattle because of the division they're in. Jay Cutler, Matthew Stafford, and now Sam Bradford. I mean, please, talk about a cakewalk for Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be that way. My point to you is that I expect the 2 top seeds to be Carolina, Green Bay, which means Carolina wouldn't have to worry about Green Bay until an NFC Championship game, whereas that may not be the case for Seattle, and as a result, they're going to run into a roadblock.
You're sleeping on how good Seattle is.
I think Seattle's very good.
You're taking Seattle over the Patriots,
I'm taking Seattle over the Patriots in the Super Bowl. It will be a rematch of Super Bowl 49, not 50. Seattle with revenge.
So you're picking Seattle to win the championship. I'm picking Carolina.
And I'm picking the Cardinals. Bruce Arians' year. I know you're nervous, Carson Palmer, had the choke job. I think he redeems himself. Arizona it is. So just 7 months ago, Denver's defense shut down Cam and company to win the Lombardi Trophy. Tonight, defending champs are the underdogs. Carolina is favored by 3. What do you expect from Tier 2 Cam tonight, Stephen A?
He's going to have a rough night. Look, this kid Remmer is still there on the offensive line, and Von Miller had a field day with him. I wrote it down last night. 3 sacks, 5 hurries, 2 forced fumbles. All of them were on Remmer. All of them, okay? The 3 sacks, the 5 hurries, the 2 forced fumbles, all on Remmer, who actually is pretty decent. And it's not like he had a bad year. It's just that Von Miller was an absolute living nightmare. Now, Denver's going to be a little bit different because you don't have Danny Trevathan. You don't have a Malik Jackson, who's now in Jacksonville. We get all of that. But the flip side to it, Wolf is still there. This kid, Shane Ray, is still there. Of course, DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller is still there. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I expect Denver's defense to be every bit as stout as we recall them being. You're opening up the new season, Super Bowl championship night. You're celebrating. You're feeling yourself just a little bit, okay? You're going to be hyped. It's on your home turf in the Mile High City, opening the season. I get all of that. The flip side is that I think Denver's offense is going to be so anemic that Carolina is going to have a field day defensively against that offense as well. So it's going to be a defensive battle, and it's going to come down to what you believe. Is Cam Newton the one that's going to get it done for you, or Trevor Siemian? Okay, forgive me. Forgive me for picking Cam Newton on that in that comparison. I'm just not worried.
Greeny's not going to be happy.
Well, or Antoine.
Greeny, Antoine, and everybody else. We'll get it. Well, please, Antoine, you wouldn't even know Antoine went to Northwestern. He never mentions it. I mean, the guy's a graduate of Northwestern. He's a proud Chicago native.
Reps his city.
And all you ever hear about from Antoine, our producer, is about Chicago. You don't hear about Northwestern, so don't bring up Northwestern now.
Shots fired.
You said Chicago. If you said Chicago, that's be different. We don't want to hear nothing from Antoine now about Northwestern. I've heard about Northwestern from Greeny. I've heard about Northwestern from J.A. Adonde. I heard about Northwestern from Mike Wilbon. I have never heard about Northwestern from Antoine Lewis, so I don't want to hear it now. Okay, forget that. We're going to get back to this. Trevor Siemian at Northwestern, please. I mean, come on now. Look, he didn't throw a pass all of last year. And the first regular season pass of your NFL career is going to be against this crew? Really? Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Can't see it. So I expect a defensive battle. I expect it to be tight and hard fought. Okay, Manuel Sanders is going to be looking to show that he deserved that $27 million in guarantees that he got. Demaryius Thomas needs to make up for the kind of season he had. C.J. Anderson is glad he's not in Miami, even though I don't know why, because South Beach ain't nothing wrong with that. But he's still in Denver. But in the end, here's what it is. It comes down to Cam Newton versus Trevor Siemian. And when it counts, I'm rolling with the league MVP, Tier 2 and all. I believe that the Carolina Panthers win this game, and I believe that Cam Newton shows up in the clutch and closes the deal.
I mean, you know what it sounds like when you say he's Tier 2, but he's the reigning MVP. He's going to win the Super Bowl. He just went to the Super Bowl, and he's about to beat the reigning champs. Listen. I just want to know what that sounds like.
I'm not most people. I don't care.
Right.
I say what I say, and I speak fluent English.
Yes.
I believe he's Tier 2.
Facts have little bearing on your way of thinking.
I've never disputed the facts. What I said is I need them more. I need longevity.
And you predict you're about to get it.
He needs a lengthy resume.
Right. Yeah, and you predict you're about to get it.
I predict.
Okay.
So
he just did it. You need to see more, and you think it's going to happen, but he's Tier 2.
I'm telling you, when it happens, I'll give him Tier 1.
All right.
I don't understand.
So nice
is this something about the English? Is this something about my English that you have a problem with? I specifically said I'm going to give it to him when he gets
Part of what we're asking when we see tier 1 or Tier 2 is your ability to predict, your thinking about the trajectory of a player's career, your ability to put your finger in the wind.
No, Max. Not when you make it clear. Not when you make it clear. That's what you're doing. Now, listen, you're going to run. Max Kellerman might sit up there and get on the treadmill and say, Stephen A., I bet you $20 I can run 5 miles. Well, damn it, you ain't getting it until you run it 5 miles. Now, I might know you can do it, but until you do it, I'm not giving you the money.
I might make $20 right now.
I'm not going to, there we go. I might make $20. But if you do it, I'm going to give you the money. But not until you do it. I need to see Cam do what Big Ben did.
I'm going to want my money at the end of the season when you say Cam is Tier 1. Okay,
sure,
good.
and I'll give it to you.
As long as I got my money, I'm good.
No, that's all right. We'll see.
You're right. The Panthers are going to win tonight. Now, they're 3-point favorites on the road, which means really 6-point favorites at a neutral site, or 9-point favorites, I guess, at home, you would say. Do I have that right? The point is, the odds makers, who are really there just trying to figure out public opinion, you want equal action on both sides of the line, feel like the wisdom of the crowd says the Panthers are a better team. Not just by a little bit, they're better, and I agree with them. I felt that way going into the Super Bowl last year. I was proven wrong on that night because of an exceptional Broncos defense, all-time great. And I just got through talking about the offensive line, how it's the most important area of football because it's the only area that affects every other area of the game, including special teams, other defense, everything. But the offensive line equivalent on defense is actually, in my view, the defensive tackles. It's the guys in the middle. Because on defense, that's the one area I see that affects every other area of the game defensively, in the sense that either the quarterback has a pocket or he doesn't. You want your edge rushers to be better, you need to collapse the pocket. You want your secondary to be better, you need to collapse the pocket. The Malik Jackson loss is a big loss because you had a guy who can collapse the pocket. All of a sudden, instead of doing that at a certain level, I think the presumption should be that that level drops off. And that should have a ripple effect on the rest of the Denver defense. You add that to the fact that now Cam has his best receiver back, and he's going to be highly motivated because at the end of that game last year, all he heard was, why don't you jump on that ball? Cam, what happened? Cam, they dared you to sit back in the pocket and beat them through the air, and you couldn't do it. You think the reigning league MVP, who was in his physical prime and could not be more motivated, now has his best receiver back, facing the team that beat him, whose defense just got worse, and whose quarterback play, by the way, you bring up Simeon. Think about this for a second. Just like last year, beginning of the season, I told everyone Peyton Manning's going to fall off a cliff, just like I'm telling you about Tom Brady over the next 18 months. I'll tell you about another player coming up. You're not going to want to hear it, but this is what age does, and injury, which comes with age. Peyton Manning's going to fall off a cliff. Watch, it's going to happen. And he played so poorly that Brock Osweiler took his job, and he played so poorly in the playoffs that Peyton took it back. And by the time they won the Super Bowl, we all sat back and said, well, they couldn't have had worse quarterback play, but guess what? They now have worse quarterback play. Yep. Their quarterback situation got even worse. I think smart money right now has the Panthers to win this game. So do I, and I think the odds reflect.
Well, I definitely think that as well. But also, when you look at Denver's offense, let's analyze this for a second. You got Trevor Simeon, like you said. He ain't gonna, what do you expect from him? What can you expect from him? Anything. He's playing with house money because anything that he does relatively decent is going to be a good thing. But then we take into account, let's look at a couple of things. C.J. Anderson needs to play better than he did last year. Yeah. And of course, their running game needs to be better. Your wideouts are Stout and Demaryius Thomas, even though he has something to prove, and Emmanuel Sanders. But when you're going up against an elite front seven, you're not going to get success throwing outside the numbers because you're going to need time to pull that off. What do you have in the interior? You got a guy in Heuerman who could potentially be an individual that produces from you for you from that tight end spot. But this is a guy when Ohio State made their national championship run. He was underutilized. They were talking about he was underutilized last year. What you going to do, suddenly utilize him with a rookie? I'm not sure about that, even though it's good for a rookie to have somebody in between the seams that you can throw the ball to, particularly in short yardage situations. So it's about C.J. Anderson, and it's about Heuerman, and it's about finding a third receiver because you can spread things out. If you got three wideouts plus your tight end plus somebody in the backfield, you can do some damage. But we don't know whether or not Denver can do that. You're going to explore and try to find that out against this defense? I don't see it. Carolina should win this game tonight. If they don't, I would be concerned, and I would be concerned about Cam because from a psychological standpoint, even though it's just one game, when you are fresh off the Super Bowl loss that he had, albeit due to the pressure, because I think he was pressured. I wrote this down, too, last night. 19 snaps versus Rema. I already talked about that. You're talking about 29 snaps overall where this guy was just under intense and immense pressure. You've got to protect him, but when you do protect him, because Kelvin Benjamin is there now, you've got more weapons than you did last year. Cam Newton's going to have to step up and produce. If you don't do that psychologically, you've got to wonder how that could potentially mess with him throughout this season.
And there goes your prediction for the Super Bowl, apparently, after week one.
No.
Tisk, tisk.
It's not.
Listen.
Not at all.
One last thing about
because
the rematch.
I'm not predicting they'll lose.
One last thing about the rematch.
Yeah.
really, it's unfair to Cam because he's not blocking for himself and all that stuff, although he did so much on the offense last year. It's almost like he, did everything, including block for himself. But they have a very good offensive line. In most respects, in the truest kind of sense of the word of a rematch, the real rematch is between Von Miller and Cam Newton. Because Cam Newton came into that game all world. It was his world, the way the NBA is LeBron James's world. He was taking over. It's all about Cam, the reigning MVP, 46 touchdowns. No one else was close, including Tom Brady. Stormed back second half of the season where Tom Brady looked like a lock for MVP. Halfway through, all of a sudden, oh, my God, Cam Newton has arrived, makes the Super Bowl. It's going to be a coronation. They're going to beat Denver. And then Von Miller was the guy who came out of that game like, look at this. Everyone's saying J.J. Watt's the best defender in the world, but maybe is Von Miller? Look how he played in the biggest game.
We'll see.
Cam, Von Miller, that's the rematch I'm looking for.
I'm so fired up. Unanimous decision here. We're all rolling with Carolina. So you heard from the guys. We want to hear from you at home. What do you think? Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know who wins tonight in the season opener.